What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripes Show. Today, we're previewing the Boston Red Sox with Chad Jennings from The Athletic. He's been on the show a number of times. Always great to talk to you. Chad, what's up?
Hey, nothing. We were just a little bit before this started talking about how kind of feels like it's a little bit back to normal. Still kind of weird, but but yeah, it feels good to at least get going after 2 years and then a lockout that wouldn't end. And so yeah, this feels like finally there's traction, right? Like finally we're moving toward a sort of normal baseball season.
Yeah, and they're going to get the full season in, even if it is a week delayed. Although I was joking on a recent show, it's like it's been 30 degrees in the Northeast. Like no one wants to play baseball in this weather. So start the season in mid-April for all I care, just so it's a little bit warmer out when we're playing these games.
Right. Yeah, Red Sox open. Well, they open in New York, and then it's like to Detroit, and we're not even getting
snow games and all that stuff.
Can we go to Dallas right now? Why are we not doing? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we've said before, it's like, well, every team could start in a warm weather or a dome, but you can't do that every year because that's kind of just like stripping
and the
fans
warm weather cities always say that for their fans that time of year feels cold to them too. Do you know what I mean? Like relative to what they're used to, like that's not the time they're going to draw that well. So so they don't really want to do that either. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not going to really feel bad for someone who thinks like 60 degrees is cold.
Totally. Yeah. No, my patience for that has gone.
Yeah. So the Red Sox, obviously last year we got the wild card game. I thought there was a good amount of hype going into that wild card game. Yankees Red Sox, obviously do or die playoff game between the arch rivals, even if that rivalry has diminished a bit over time. And then the Red Sox made a pretty deep playoff run. I don't want to say their season came out of nowhere, because I even remember talking to you before the season started, and you laid out how if they're going to be good this year, how they're going to be good. Mm-hmm. And you basically said they're going to mash the ball. And that's what they did. They hit the ball. Mm-hmm. But is there a little bit of a feeling like last year was an overachievement, or was it just that this is the team they thought they had?
I think I kept saying that last year, especially at the first half, and then it kept playing out. But I was like, it's proof of concept, right? That yes, the Red Sox last year were not kind of the typical like all-in trade prospects away, sign a huge name. But the concept was like, you don't have to be that to be competitive. Like there will be a time where you go, okay, maybe we go super all in this year, but maybe you can be a good team in a big market like this that doesn't feel the need to make the huge splash every year and can still line up things where it's like, okay, yeah, like it's not perfect, but there are ways this can work. You sign a Hunter Renfro, sign Kike Hernandez, and there's a lot to like there. And if it works, and you're going to be good. And that's what happened with them. And so, I don't know that it was a fluke so much as it was kind of it was the way they were designed, and some things played out well. They also are big. They're big on depth now. And some of that helped them. They had a lot more pitching depth in 21 than they had in 20. And so second half of the season, when Garrett Richards obviously struggled for a while when they could no longer use the sticky stuff on their fingers, and it took him a while to kind of get back. But they had other starters they could move in, right? And then, he and Martin Perez moved to the pen, and the depth really, I think, helped them, and that played out pretty well too, and was sort of what kind of helped sustain them.
Well, Chaim Bloom totally changed the philosophy of how that, like from Dombrowski to Chaim Bloom, that's a complete 180.
Totally.
And I don't know. I mean, I kind of follow Red Sox news closer than any other team, not the Yankees, just because they're the Red Sox. But it almost felt like there's like a little bit of a feeling of the Red Sox were being cheap on the free agent market. But then they signed Story. Mm-hmm. And it's not exactly like a perfect fit. Obviously, he's going to play second base. And maybe if Bogarts moves on, opts out of his contract, he can slide over to shortstop. But that's not like a move that was obvious for the Red Sox to make. So it's interesting that that's the guy they decided to go with on the free agent market.
Yeah, I thought when they made the Renfro trade, when they traded over Renfro and brought in Jackie Bradley, brought him back, I thought, okay, this lines up where they're going to spend money and they're going to spend it on a right fielder. Right, they're going to make Jackie more like a fourth outfielder type and go out and get whoever. Bryant, bring back Schwarber, maybe play him in left, move Verdugo to right, something, get some sort of corner outfielder. But I think the decision to go with Story, I think that speaks a little bit to the way, again, you talk about the way Chaim Bloom runs things. The obvious plug and play there was an outfielder, was a big bat that could play that corner where you've kind of opened something. But Chaim talks a lot about sustainability. And when the Red Sox talked about Story as a perfect fit, I think some of that was they acknowledged that they might not have Bogarts back next year. Right. And so for them, the perfect fit was, does this guy make us better this year? And Story does, right? He obviously upgrades second base. He gives them that big right-handed bat that they were missing. But also, if you start looking bigger picture, he gives them an alternative at short if they can't bring Bogarts back. And the timing, should work out pretty well if some of those young kids, Marcelo Mayer, their first pick last year, Nick York the year before that, like those middle infield guys, if it does work with them, the timetable's pretty great in terms of being able to slot them in kind of at the end of that Story deal. So I think the sustainable way that Chaim's trying to build the organization is what made Story the choice, because he fits this year, but the bigger picture is he gives them alternatives and options going forward as well.
So do you think the plan is to try and extend Bogarts? Like, what would stop them from doing that?
It's hard to tell. I really, that's another thing that I've said before and have talked to a lot of people about. With Chaim seems never to, I think we always talk about like, what's the solution, right? What's the answer here? And I really don't think that's the way they think about it these days. I think that they try to approach everything with like, there's always a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and their fingers are everywhere, right? Like, so yeah, I think they would like to bring back Bogarts. I think there's absolutely a way for them to extend Devers, extend Bogarts, and have Story and build around those three for the next 5 years. And I mean, the way their farm system's lined up, I think that could work. I just think that's a very realistic possibility. But I don't think, if you're the team that traded Mookie Betts, you're willing to move on from anyone.
That's just where...
And yeah. So I think, so yeah, could they? Absolutely, I think. And I think they really like Xander. Xander is he's a really good clubhouse guy, a good leader. He's the guy who kind of, you can tell that kids in the organization look to him as kind of like the model of what to do. And I think the Red Sox acknowledge that and like that. So I do think they would love to have him back.
How old is Bogarts?
29.
He seems like he's been in the league forever. Like, what didn't he come up
20?
in?
He was 20 when he made his debut in 20 for that 2013 team.
That's crazy. I would have guessed. Just because he's been around so long, I'd figured he's 33 years old or something. Yeah. But yeah, he's if he opts out, he would be a top free agent on the market. Yeah. And who knows, maybe Correa's back on the market next year too, if he opts out. So there was a feeling that Mookie Betts wasn't completely all in on Boston, and that was one of the reasons. Yeah, is that overblown?
I think it's overblown. Okay. I really do. I mean, I just think that for Mookie, I really think that to some extent he recognized that he was one of the elite guys in the game, right? And I do think he felt some I don't know if it's I think there were maybe two things. Like, he felt some almost like responsibility to help set a market, right? Like, it was sort of part of his job as that high-end guy to like set a bar.
That's agent talk, though. That's like players union stuff.
But I do think he might have felt some of that. Like, I'm supposed to be this thing. But I also think he liked Boston. I think he was fine here, but I just don't think he's a guy from Nashville. Like, And I think he wants to. That's going to be his home. Like, I don't think he was looking for, like the place that he wasn't looking to sign some place where like this is going to be where he is for the rest of his life. Like, he kind of knows baseball's a thing he's going to do for this one little 20-year window in his life, and whatever, you kind of make the most of that and then go. I don't think it was necessarily anti-Boston so much as it was. It's whatever. Like, he can do this anywhere, sure, for a good team. So yeah, I don't think he felt any I have to be in Boston my whole career. I think that's the case. But I don't think it was like, I got to get the hell out of Boston. It was just whatever.
Right. And like most things, it comes down to money, and it doesn't seem like the Red Sox were willing to give him the same level of contract that the Dodgers ended up giving him.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
will the Red Sox be willing to give Bogarts the level of contract that he'll be looking for, which is probably what Seager got on the market this offseason, right? That's got to be the starting point.
Yeah, and I think that's the question, is if Xander is going to insist on coming back at a huge open market deal, then I don't know if he'll be back. He signed the extension he signed, whatever that was, before 19, right? Yeah. It's paying him like $20 million a year, which is obviously below market value now. But so, is he willing to do that for I don't know. It's just going to be, I think if he's going to want a full, massive open market deal, I don't know if they're going to want to go there for a guy who's about to turn 30. But I also think Xander feels some of that tie to Boston that Mookie maybe doesn't or didn't. I think. Now, I don't know. I mean, Boris is his agent, so who knows if he gets talked out of that and is told, like, hey, look, let's go to the market and
Boris clients don't sign extensions.
Yeah, but he did. I mean,
an
extension with an opt-out. But I'm just saying, like, it's to some extent, it's going to be, does Xander want to come here for a little bit less maybe than what he can get open market? And he might. But I don't know. I mean, he may really, prefer that stability, but it's hard to tell. I mean, these guys, it's always an easy thing for us to look at and be like, it's a lot of money, man. Just be where you're happy and do it. But I mean, it's a different world.
You can't compare the money.
Yeah, you can't compare it. You can't. It's a totally different deal. Right. So I don't know. Like I don't. If he decides to hit the open market, if you're the Red Sox, I don't think you can say like, oh, he abandoned us or something. Like, no, it's just this is what it is, So I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Is it going to be a running narrative with the team all year, as is the Judge extension, if nothing gets done before opening day?
Oh yeah, it'll be a big thing, especially now that Story's here, right? Like that there's a possibility of a replacement, and but it's him and Devers both. I mean, Devers only has one more year of team control after this, so those two guys both, the sort of extension clock's ticking.
If they were to only pick one of those guys to give the big contract to, do you think it would be Devers?
I do, but I would caveat that a little bit by saying that Devers is also going to be probably bigger, right? Like, I mean, he's a younger player, more prime years left. So, yeah, I mean, if you get to pick one, you'd pick Devers, I think, but also, what's the price difference there and all that stuff. So, I think it's also not totally out of the realm of possibility that they don't do Devers and they do Bogarts. But I think if you had a preference, I think you'd rather do Devers just because he's younger and seems to be, just now kind of fulfilling everything that he could be.
Well, you have the insurance built in with Story. So as you're negotiating with Bogarts, he yes, still has leverage because he's a fantastic player, but the Red Sox, like we have an all-star level shortstop that can just slide in there. It's not like we're going to be sitting there with no shortstop. So
yeah, in the span of like 72 hours, I think it went from like Xander's going to be the star shortstop on the market next year to, well, now Correa could be a free agent again next year, and now the Red Sox have a backup plan at shortstop if you become a free agent. So like it can't have been the best 72 hours for him in terms of like his prospects for this next offseason.
He said all the right things though. I was reading some quotes
totally. He does. That's part of why I think that they like him so much. He really is good in that role. That whole like face of the franchise thing and kind of model citizen that you want your young kids to look at. He's good at that. Now whether that's enough to, do you pay a guy for that? I don't know.
Doesn't hurt.
But it doesn't hurt. And he is, especially for a franchise that I think is trying to transition a little bit, right? A little bit away from that free agent roster building model to something more sustainable, more stronger farm system, more willingness to move guys up into roles. It's not the worst time to have a a guy who's been with your organization for 10 years and who you know and trust to be kind of the model, it's not a bad time to have that guy kind of at the front of the classroom.
You mentioned at the top that the Red Sox kind of realized that it's okay to put a good team on the field and compete.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tough division to just put a good team on the field and expect. I mean, yes, there's expanded playoffs, so they could still be a wild card team, no problem. But you can't just win. You can't win this division with just a good team.
Yeah, but I mean, they also they finished second in the division last year.
I'm not saying they're only going to be just a good team.
Yeah,
this is a juggernaut of division.
Oh, totally.
Any of the top four teams could win. Honestly, I could see it playing out any four slots each team.
Completely agree. Well, and I would also say though that I have a harder time seeing it playing out for the Rays, but I feel that way every year, and then the Rays do it. So I don't know what it is that
100 wins last year. They're not gonna be an 83 win team all of a sudden.
Yeah, completely agree. But yeah, I don't, and that's also I think why they needed to do the Story deal, right? I mean, it was they went into spring training started, and you could put together an 8-man bullpen and a 5-man rotation and a full starting line. Be like, all right, this team's okay. But then, they go out and they get Diekman and Strom, and they kind of improve their bullpen a little bit, and they go out and get Story to get the big bat. Like they were okay going into spring training. The fact they got some of these signings done and then made the splash with Story, I think put them, maybe, again, you can't say that they're like the favorite for the division, but it put them in there where you can say, okay, now I see how this works, where there is a world in which this team could win the division.
And they're going to score, obviously. I was reading something earlier today that between Story, JD Martinez, Devers, and Bogarts, they all rank in the top 11 for extra base hits in baseball over the last 4 seasons.
Yeah,
so that's 4 out of your 9 slots who are in the top 11 in extra base hits. They're going to score. Is there enough pitching on this roster to allow the offense to win a ton of games for them? Because the Sale injury obviously is massive to start the season. Eduardo Rodriguez, I'm surprised that he got that much on the open market, but then again, he's been a pretty solid starting pitcher.
Yeah.
So
Eduardo's been just really reliable, and I think which is amazing because I mean, even go back to 17 or so, he felt very inconsistent, and then it's kind of like he just found his groove as kind of like that, not an ace or anything, but a good, just reliable guy to stick in there. You're going to win games behind him.
You need him. You need those guys.
Yeah, but I think the pitching's interesting to me because they've obviously really loaded up on depth there. Even with Sale out, they've got they get Waka at the back end. Take a shot on Rich Hill, staying viable into his 40s. Nick Pivetta, great sort of comeback year last season. Tanner Houck moves into the rotation. They still have Garrett Whitlock, who they could make a starter, but I think they're going to. So there's depth there. And they have they have like 4 guys on their 40-man who are going to be in AAA. So that there's more pitching depth. It's just, and so that's good. I think that they're happy with that. But you just have to, are Evaldi and Sale, is that a legit 1-2? And it could be. I mean, shoot, Evaldi was it was like a mid-ballot Cy Young candidate last year. And Sale is Sale. So it could be enough pitching where, they don't have Garrett Cole, but they have 2 guys who it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're going to be like top 10 starters in the American League.
Right.
And then with a lot of depth behind it. So you can see how it'll work, but I think that's in the rotation and in the bullpen. Again, it's one of those where it's not hard to envision a world where it works, and they're pretty good, but there are a lot of questions there too, where there's not much there where you look at it and go, oh, that's the sure thing, right? They don't have that. The Yankees have Chapman and Cole, who you can go, okay, like, boom, put those guys in.
Sure, but I mean, it didn't work out that way last year. I mean, Cole was great start to finish. I think he was injured at the end of the year. The sticky stuff, I think he declined a little bit after the sticky stuff, but a lot of pitchers did as well. Right. Chapman got pulled from the closer role in midseason. So just because you have Aroldis Chapman making $17 million in the back of your bullpen doesn't mean it's not Mariano Rivera anymore.
Yeah, everybody was spoiled there for a long time. I was spoiled there for a long time. covering them, I was spoiled. Like, you could have your story done in the 8th because Mo was coming in the 9th, and if Mo blew it, that was the whole story.
The story.
Yeah,
3 times
it made it easy.
Blew a save.
Yeah. And you'd go in and like we'd ask him questions, and he'd literally like put his arm on someone's shoulder and be like, "It's gonna be okay." It's like, okay.
And it always was. I mean, it's amazing. Even after he blew the highest two of the most high-profile blown saves in Major League Baseball history.
Amazing.
Didn't freaking matter.
No, just the perspective of that guy was awesome.
Yeah. No, but so I mean, you're right. I think the rotation does have. They have bodies there that can the depth they didn't have. The bullpen, though. I know the Red Sox over the last couple seasons, and especially with Cora, so many pitching changes, so many very analytically driven. These guys have their slots. They're going to make a lot of pitching changes. Is that their plan still with just all of these different bullpen arms?
It seems like it. They've got a lot of guys who could kind of mix and match in there. They've loaded up on some lefties. When was that? In 19? Yeah, it was 19 because after they had Kimbrel as the closer in 18. And they go into 19, and Cora thought he'd try the thing with no closer and have Matt Barnes just pitch the highest leverage inning every night, and which all makes sense on paper, right? Like, give your best guy, don't chase saves, and it just, it wore him down, man. You make a guy deal with that much stress night after night after night, and even Cora admitted, he was like, I didn't factor it, just beat him up. Yeah. So I do think he'll end up with somewhat of a defined role. I would assume it'll be Barnes as the closer again. Barnes has looked really good this spring, again at spring training. So I say that and then also feel like an idiot for saying it. Yeah. But I think it'll be a little bit more defined than just purely matchups every inning where anybody could go anywhere, but I do think that there's a lot of, I don't know, like that there's a defined setup guy. I think it's going to be kind of 4 guys who he can mix and match in the 7th and 8th, and they've got, if they have Whitlock in the bullpen, maybe they could end up with Darwinson Hernandez in the bullpen too, where they're gonna stretch those guys out as like the 3-inning guys, and they'll kind of go from there. But it's going to be a lot of guys bouncing between roles for sure.
That's an interesting point that Cora made about the stress of the high leverage innings wearing a guy down. It's not something he factored in, and that's a reason why I appreciate analytics, but it can't be the whole story because this is still a human game. And if a guy's always pitching in the highest leverage points, it's going to wear him down, not just mentally, but physically as well. You have to be sharper. You have to throw harder. You have to be on your game every night. So
it's one thing. Somebody told me once about the we knock all these pitchers now for like only throwing 100 pitches when guys used to go 140 every night, and he was like, you don't understand, though, that guys used to be able to kind of coast on a few pitches. And he's like, now that's just not these guys are throwing every pitch, like with as much intensity as possible. And he said that's also why it's taken longer. Like they're taking, it's taken between, whatever, maybe it used to be 15 seconds between pitches and now it's 20. Like they're a little bit more, they're resting their arm just a little bit longer between pitches because they've got to gear up for another big one.
There was a great video on Twitter a couple years back it was a side-by-side of David Price, who's notoriously slow on the mound, and then I forget who it was for the Red Sox, I think in the 78 playoff game against the Yankees. That guy threw 2 full pitches before David Price even threw 1 pitch.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's great.
And it's all of those little things that add up in the game as to why it's slower today. It's not just that the pitchers take longer. It's not just that that there's more 3 true outcomes. It's all of the things, all of the above that make the games slower and have less action.
Yeah.
I was going to make a point about can't remember what I was going to say about the bullpen arms, but yeah, so and I think Cora does. I mean, his impact can't be understated, right? On returning to the dugout, and all of a sudden the team is back on track.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge Ron Reineke based on 2020. I mean, there were just a billion things that went wrong that year, and it was an impossible year to be a manager. But I do think Cora's return. There is something about that guy, man. I don't know what it is. There's There's a confidence. There's even, for a guy who got wrapped up in the whole, not wrapped up, but was obviously a key part in the whole Astros scandal, like just even the way he handled that, right? I mean, like answering questions about it, talking it through, admitting, like there's an accountability to him. I will never forget his first year here early in the year. I think it was against the Yankees. The Red Sox had this big comeback late in the game, and I think he had JD playing left field, and they go out for the ninth, and he didn't put Jackie in for defense. And so after the game, we're all like, why didn't you make the defensive switch there once you took the lead? And he goes, oh, I just forgot. He was like, I got so wrapped up in the comeback, I totally forgot to do it.
That's amazing.
And it was so like, oh,
what do you say to that? Okay.
Yeah.
You
okay.
Forgot. You made a mistake.
And also, you think players don't notice that? I mean, it's weird to say the guy who was a part of the sign stealing scandal is like good because he's accountable, but it's kind of true. I mean, he has a style of doing this that I think players appreciate, and he does a good job of, as we've talked about, like he does follow analytics closely. He believes in it really well. All the guys in the analytics department talk about what a good kind of teammate Alex is in that regard, right? That he'll listen to them and they have conversations. He's genuinely interested. But Alex is also the guy who he'll play cards with the guys in the clubhouse, and you'll walk in and he's sitting in Xander's locker just talking to him about whatever. He does a good job of marrying those two, of being able to say, the numbers told me to do the bullpen this way, and now upon seeing it for 2 months, I can see the personal toll that's taking, and I'll adjust from there. Like he does a very good job with that. He runs a clubhouse really well. I think he runs a game really well. I think that there's a definite impact there.
And one of the things, a lot of managers in the situation that you just described and forgetting to put someone in for defense, a lot of managers, including Aaron Boone, which is one of the reasons why he frustrates me, would have tried to talk his way around it and give you some advanced metric as to why he left him in, or some bogus reason, when in reality he just forgot. And you know what? That can be okay sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Don't forget in the playoffs, but if you forget in April, I can forgive you.
Yeah. It does. It gives a different feel to the team when a guy's talking about things that way.
Was the Hunter Renfro trade a little weird? Because I that went down, and he had a pretty solid season, 30 plus doubles, 30 plus home runs, and they get Jackie Bradley back, who's obviously a great defender, but not much offensively anymore.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's strange. I mean, it's an unusual deal, but I would also say, like, I mean, a week before the trade happened, I'd written that, like, they kind of were at a point with Renfro where you had to decide, either you try to sign him for like a 3-year deal or you trade him, because this another year of arbitration, he was going to start making kind of basically what he's worth, right? Like, you're no longer getting added value out of him, and so you kind of needed to make a decision. Like, do you want to kind of have this guy be your guy in right field for the next 3 years or so, or do you try to get something for him? And then also, just the principle of you sell high on Renfro, buy low on Jackie makes sense, right? Like, there's obviously logic in that, and then you get prospects back. So it's easy to, the logic of it is there, but it's still just such an odd move for a team that is clearly in contention and believes they can win, to go, this guy who had a breakout year and hit 30 plus homers for us, we're just going to trade him for a guy who literally was the worst offensive player in baseball last year. Now, another thing they'd said was that he is, but it's hard to find a premier center fielder, a guy who can play defense that well, and you're playing at Fenway where right field's another center. I mean, they do feel like they need that.
So is he going to play in right? Because you've got two center fielders.
Play, they're going to play Jackie in right against right-handers, and then they've got a few different ways they can go against lefties. But yeah, he's basically just going to platoon in right field against right-handed pitchers, and he gives them, again, they're a big depth team. They like this idea of backup plans, and so anything happens in the infield because of Kike Hernandez. Now you could always move. Basically every position now is covered, because you could always move Jackie to center, where you're going to have at least premier defense there, and Hernandez could come in and play second or third or short, whatever. He also adds that element to them that I don't think they dismiss that as part of Jackie's value to them because he's alongside Kike, it opens up a lot of doors.
Is JD going to play the outfield?
That's what they tell us.
I mean,
Cora just said in probably the next to last week of spring training that part of his plan for against lefties is to play Jackie against right-handers, and that JD will play the outfield against a lot of lefties.
In left field,
in the field, yeah, he'd play.
No,
in right. I'm sorry, in right, because
but like you just described, it's probably the toughest right field in baseball.
And that was my immediate follow-up question was, is that true at Fenway as well? Would you play him in right at Fenway? And his thing, he was just like, yeah, we just think he makes the plays. He's not going to make a great play, but we think he makes the plays, and that Verdugo has really taken to left field and likes it, and they just want to be able to keep him there. I don't know. He also noted that there really aren't that many lefty starters in the division now. You know, I mean,
that's a good point.
Yankees have Jordan Montgomery.
Nestor Cortez.
Oh, yeah, Cortez. I think that, there are a few. The Orioles have a bunch, but I don't think you're worried too much about that. So I don't know. And they've also been they've been playing Christian Arroyo out in the outfield, where maybe he becomes an option out there. They have Rob Refsnyder in camp as a non-roster guy, and
is he going to make the team? Old friend Refsnyder?
He could. I really think he could. He was very good against lefties last year. Almost an 800 OPS. Played a lot of center field for the Twins. So I mean, maybe he's an alternative, right? You get against a guy, even if JD is typically the guy who's playing in the outfield against lefties, if it's a home game, maybe Renfro or maybe Refsnyder makes the team and he goes out there in those games to play. There are ways you could do this that kind of minimize some of the defensive hit you'd take with JD, but they say they're going to play him out there. We'll see.
Were you covering the Yankees when Refsnyder was called up back in, was that I think 2015, the 2015 season?
Yeah, 15. Yep.
It was like on the one hand, I was a huge Refsnyder guy because they were struggling with Stephen Drew at second base, and I was like, just play anyone there because anyone can be better. But it's just like an example of a prospect getting completely overhyped, and it's not even to Refsnyder's fault at all. It's just we were desperate for anything, and all the scouts were like, listen, he's a solid player, but he's not going to be anything special to major league level.
Well, you know what? It reminded me too a little bit of Nunez. In that it felt to me a little bit like the Yankees were always conflicted on what to do with him, right? Like, do you with Nunez, it was always like, do you trust him in the field or not? Like, is he? And they never seemed to know. Like, they'd send him to winter ball and tell him to play shortstop all year, and then he'd come into spring training and they're like, oh, we think you're going to platoon at third. He'd be like, what? Like, and same with Refsnyder. Remember, like all of a sudden out of nowhere, he's playing third base in big league games. And like, he'd never played third in his life. He was still learning how to play second. So it always felt a little bit with him that he just, I don't know how you get comfortable in that role when like, it never really seemed like the Yankees were entirely sure what to do with him. And now he's kind of carved out this niche as kind of a, right-handed bat, hits lefties pretty well. He can kind of play, I think he's primarily an outfielder now, but obviously could play second or first if you need him to. And that's probably kind of where he fits better.
So what's your prediction for how the division shakes out? A lot of projections have the Red Sox in the mid 80s wins, but what's your feeling?
I mean, it feels so much like last year to me, where again, you could see the way, I do think they're better than they were last year, but I mean, so are the Blue Jays, I think.
Oh yeah.
How much do these guys just beat each other up again? I mean,
who's going to go 17-2 against Baltimore?
Right.
I'm not even.
I know.
Not kidding.
I'm with you.
That's who's won the division.
Yes.
Every year.
Yes.
Barring the 2020 season.
Yep.
The Red Sox crushed Baltimore, then the Yankees crushed Baltimore, and then Tampa crushed Baltimore last year. And everyone else goes 500 against the other team, and then you go 17 or 18 wins against Baltimore, and you win the division.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane, but I do think you're exactly right. Like, you've got to take those games and just crush them, and that makes all the difference. Because like we said, those other four teams, there are ways it can work for all four of them. And so they're going to beat each other. One of them might, whatever. Somebody emerges for one of them and just shoves, and all, Severino comes back and is a stud again. Like all of a sudden, the Yankees take a step forward, right? So there are all these ways that it can any team could kind of take off. But I think as you look at it now, it's just I have no prediction on it because they just look like a group of. It's this cluster of teams that you go, okay, let's see what happens here, because it feels like a little bit of a dice roll for all of them.
And with the playoffs now, you get buys in the playoffs. Like the White Sox and the Astros are probably sitting there like, we have to just do our business and let those teams beat up on each other, and then we get our buys and then let the cards fall where they may. Yeah. That's what the plans are in those other divisions, because I don't really see any of the other teams. Minnesota got better, but also not a ton better.
Right. Minnesota got better. Every year, the Angels look like they could be good.
They haven't finished above 500 in 8 years.
Right. Yeah. It seems every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, I can see how this works. I'm like, wait, what am I doing? Like, I've seen it not work way too many times to fall for this again. Yeah. But yeah, the Mariners are maybe kind of something. I don't know. The Rangers kind of went and did a lot of things.
Spent a lot of money.
Make them a thing? I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird. Everywhere else is kind of there's a lot of stuff floating up in the air. And, I mean, aside from the White Sox, I think are really good. Everyone else, I think, has a lot of questions to them. And then there's the East, where there's just 4 teams that are legitimately good.
Right. All right. The last thing I want to talk to you about, you wrote an article during the lockout about the baseball putting in relegation. And how it would be really, I loved the articles. It was really, I like how you laid it out, like made sense for someone like me who knows nothing about international soccer. Right. And I was like, damn, this actually makes a lot of freaking sense. It's not going to happen. You even acknowledged it's never going to happen. But are there a couple things that you would like to see change? Not maybe rules on the field or just structure of divisions or anything like that?
One thing I'm big on is, another thing that would never happen. I think it's an unpopular opinion, but I actually think there are too many guys in minor league baseball. And the reason I think that is that so few of them actually make it. And so I think there has to be a better way to do that, where I wonder if you could limit teams to 3 minor league affiliates, but the league would then have to invest in an independent league that's legit and that is happening alongside it, almost like the D League or something, and where you'll get guys who are 4A players and all these guys on minor league deals. Right now, those guys have no choice but to sign with a team and then hope a door opens, right? And if the difference between that they signed with this team and nobody got hurt, or if they'd signed over here and everybody got hurt, this guy, same player, this one gets half a season in the big leagues and this one is stuck in AAA all year, and it's all because you just picked the wrong team. Right. So I think if you had fewer minor league affiliates, fewer minor league spots, there's another league happening alongside it where those guys could go and whatever, there are 6 teams there just full of players, and then they're available. So a team, calls up its one extra infielder out of AAA, and then they can go pluck somebody from that. And now you're in a team where you're the next guy up, right? Instead of just you signed and hope something happens. Same with, if you could have a league of guys who went undrafted, because obviously you'd have to have the draft a lot smaller, and they get similar deal. They get to go play and actually show off rather than end up sitting on the bench in low A somewhere. I don't know. I just think that I wish there was something that could happen where there were more opportunities for guys, because everything gets better for players that's why they want free agency. That's why the Rule 5 draft matters. When you open up the world to them where other teams can sign them, that's better. And so I kind of think about that a little bit, that I wish there was some mechanism whereby players could keep themselves available without just being stuck at home, waiting for a deal. But I don't know how it could possibly work, really. But I wish there was something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's something the lockout really didn't address, right? We're talking about the players union, which is the players on the 40-man roster. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guys not on 40-man rosters like you just described, just hoping and praying, not hoping someone gets injured, but hoping something happens to someone and they get a door open for them. Or they are like, do I go play in Japan? Do I go play in Korea? And make a little bit more money, but I'm in a foreign country where I don't speak the language. So
right. Yeah. I don't know. And I wonder if you could do, especially with guys who are like undrafted guys, if you independent league, say if you're in the Boston area, right? Just if you could, you load up your roster with like minor league free agents who played briefly for the Red Sox and then undrafted guys out of New England colleges, like. Now is there kind of like a little bit of a local attraction too, with like having this little league here? And I don't know. I would think that there's some way to do it where you could have another, a version of baseball that's still popular in like minor league towns. Yeah. And that also feeds the big leagues in a different way.
Have you been out to a Woo Sox game yet?
I have been to a Woo Sox game. It's a nice ballpark. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of years covering AAA ball in Scranton. So I've gotten used to, I like AAA parks. They're some of them are, especially now that they're replacing a lot of them and getting some nicer facilities. They're pretty cool.
I actually have it's a little bit of sentimental value to me because I'm from Rhode Island. So the Pawtucket Red Sox, even though I was not a Red Sox fan, obviously we used to go to those games so often in the summer. And any time that the Yankees, which was then Columbus, was in town, we would go to those games. So it was a little bit sad to see the Paw Sox leave for Worcester. But yeah, I have seen online that the stadium looks beautiful.
Stadium's great. And again, it's nice. I like anytime a team's affiliate is pretty close to the major league team, right? And obviously they had that in Pawtucket too, but that they didn't have to go far away, that it's still right here, 45 minutes down the road is nice.
45 minutes or 3 hours with traffic.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
All right, Chad. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Always so fun to talk to you. And we'll catch up later down the road on how it's going between the Yankees, Red Sox, and the rest of the division.
Yeah, it sounds great, man. Let me know anytime.